My friends, our next panel is going to be a slightly different approach. I'm extremely excited about this one. We have 4 panelists. We have Shane Smith, who is an insurance broker for the Alera Group. We have Chris Sullivan, who is the co-founder and portfolio manager of Hyperion Decimus, the coolest sounding name company ever. We have Dr. Shawn Baker, who's a surgeon, an athlete, the author of Carnivore Diet, and the co-founder of Rivero. And finally, moderating this panel, we have Stanczyk, who's a personal friend, family office advisory, and he is also personally responsible for assisting individuals, family offices, and businesses acquire over $1 billion in Bitcoin. He's an absolute baller. Please put your hands together for our panel on honest money and behavioral incentives.
All right. Greetings, gentlemen. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. The topic that we're going to cover today is honest money and behavioral incentives. When I say honest money, what I mean by that is the alternative to honest money is basically dishonest money. If you've been around Bitcoin for a little while, I think you probably know what I'm talking about. But if you're new and you're trying to figure out what we're talking about, but when I say dishonest money, what I mean essentially is fiat money that can be printed by a small group of men ad infinitum, as much as they possibly want, and it's essentially a very unfair system. It creates this problem called the cancel-on effect, that in effect is causing this massive bifurcation of society where if you own assets, you're becoming wealthier and wealthier all the time. If you do not, you're becoming poorer and poorer all the time in terms of relative purchasing power. To kind of put it simply, if the Fed is targeting a 2% rate of inflation, that means you have really like a 35-year half-life on your money. Before the time that you retire, essentially, that means inflation will have stolen almost half of your wealth, half of your purchasing power, not to mention taxes and all the other things that also takes wealth from you. So from a mathematical perspective, I think we have a very serious problem in Western society where young people are now sort of looking at what's going on right now, and they're thinking to themselves, how is this even going to work? Because frankly, incomes are not keeping pace with inflation, and it's looking kind of bleak. So that's why I'm super thankful for Bitcoin and the potential that Bitcoin has. But I'll stop there, and let's dig in with the guys here. Let's start with Chris. Chris, you're a monetary historian. We've had a chance to talk a little bit. I know you're very well versed in this kind of stuff. From your perspective, can you talk a little bit about how you see fiat economics and money affecting human behavior? And where do we go from here? How do we fix some of this stuff in your view?
One thing I want to kind of fire everybody up on that's in this vein is that honest money leads to things like this. And I've been doing these kind of talks for 9 years, and GW's done one of the best jobs. So I think we should all give him a big round of applause. And staff's done well. So this is kind of the counterpoint to the fiat system. I mean, we're all here because we understand something is major on the effed up side. We have proxy wars. We have fake medicine called allopathic medicine. We have a musical frequency that's demonic that was changed in the late 20s. We have perpetual wars that are funded by various Five Eyes plus NGOs. How do the NGOs get money? And as you alluded to, the proximity to the spigot, and I'm doing the pyramid on purpose here, ladies and gentlemen, the proximity to the spigot allows for all of these nefarious tangential offshoots that are harming freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and most importantly, prosperity and then generational wealth building.
Yeah. From your point of view, where do you think some of the solutions lie? I know a lot of Bitcoiners say this. There's a saying in Bitcoin that Bitcoin fixes this. There's another one, fix the money, fix the world. Do you think, I think a lot of people who are not Bitcoiners or looking at Bitcoin from the outside or hear things like that and they think maybe, wow, that sounds just a little bit cultish. Like, how does that actually work in real terms? Is there real pathways forward here?
Yeah, I think cultish is because it's maybe foreign to the propaganda people are spoon-fed. I think the best sort of tip of the spear that Bitcoin accomplishes is being a higher consciousness asset, where we can have many different dialogues. You all have seen many different lanes that these dialogues have been in, but it has to focus on first principles, right? And if we don't all agree on what those are, it's kind of hard to move ahead in this battle against the fiat system.
Sure. Okay. Let's jump over to Dr. Shawn Baker. I'm going to briefly preface this by saying Shawn has been very successful in a lot of different endeavors. He's very well known for the Carnivore Diet. But most recently, he's been bestowed with the honorary title of the #1 misinfluencer in the world, according to the WEF.
Yeah, when that was bestowed upon me by the World Economic Forum-backed Eat Lancet Commission a couple of days ago, I didn't know whether to be worried or flattered, but I think it's a term of flattery, quite honestly. Yeah, just as most of us are aware how the financial system is, just broken at its very base. We have a fiat system which serves very few, it doesn't serve the masses. The medical system is very similar. We've got perverse incentives as physicians. We don't actually heal people anymore. We now have adopted this policy, what's called disease management. I remember the first time I heard about this, I think in the 90s, and I wondered what does disease management mean? Well, it just means keeping people medicated chronically for the rest of their life to sort of, manipulate their symptoms, which is, it doesn't really serve the population very well. And we have enormous amounts, just like Michael Saylor was talking about these giant skyscrapers in New York from these financial institutes. We have this similar, analogous, buildings, hospital systems that cost enormous amounts of money. We have all this technology that overlays this whole concept of keeping people chronically medicated and managing their disease. And the reality is there's something we can do that's much cheaper, that's much better, something that we do at our company at Rivero that actually gets people off medications. And it's very simple. And most of us, what Bitcoin does, it democratizes money. We can do that with health as well. A lot of times people get diagnosed with a chronic disease. You go to the doctor and ask, well, why do I have this disease? And you're often met with, well, we don't know, bad luck, genetics, something like that. It's very unsatisfactory. And then the answer is, what do I do about it? Well, you take these pills for the rest of your life, of course. That becomes, demoralizing, depressing, and disempowering. And I can tell you that we know why. We can figure out why people are sick. And it's not, a lack of, insulin or metformin or something like that, or whatever drug, SSRI, be a good example. It has to do with what you're feeding them, how they're dealing with their sleep, their stress, their activity level, their circadian biology. And once you line all those things up, 80, 90% of the people become disease-free. And so, again, we have a fiat medical system, and the food system similar. What the Eat Lancet Commission, with regard to me, was I don't think it's appropriate that human beings become bug-eating vegetarians. I just don't think that's the solution. That is their solution. Obviously, I'm a big proponent of eating meat and lots of it. And so, we're seeing, you can look at what $1 would buy you in terms of nutrition back in the day relative to today. Now, we get a lot of food these days, but what we're eating is not nutritious. And in many ways, most of our diet is akin to these ultra-processed foods particularly are akin to recreational drugs. I mean, they don't provide nutrition. They provide sort of the stimulation that a recreational drug has. And so you have to unaddict people from this. You have to sort of deprogram them, unbrainwash them to actually fix the people. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we hope to continue to do. And I think it's a solvable solution. I don't think, as much as I, happy to see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in that role, trying to take it on from the government side, it's going to have to come from the people, just like Bitcoin is. And Bitcoin is here because not 2 or 3 guys, that's why, Nakamoto is anonymous. It's because it's all of us that have to do that. The same thing has to happen on the health side. So that's kind of what I try to promote.
All right, so I think most people in the West are aware that there's, especially in America, that there's a problem with the healthcare system. I mean, I keep seeing all these stories of people going in and they tell them that they have insurance, and then the price is quoted at like 10 times higher or 100 times higher in some cases than if they're just cash pay. So there's obviously a problem with the insurance and those types of things. But for people who don't know kind of necessarily how we got here, what is the link, like in terms of honest money versus dishonest money, and how that affects human behavior? What's the link? Where do you think that sort of going off the rails monetarily, is there a tie-in at some point in history where that started to affect policy and subsidies and how farming works and the whole process? Where did we go off? Where did we go wrong?
Well, I think, with regard to, one thing about the health insurance industry, which really shocked me to find, I mean, the Affordable Care Act, basically what it did was it said to insurance companies, you can take no more than 15% of your revenue from premiums and turn that into administrative fees, also known as profits and salaries, right? So the only way that 15% becomes sizable is if the entire cost of healthcare goes up. So we have this incentive from an insurance company who you'd think would be the guys that are designed to put the brakes on, but their incentive to make money is to have healthcare cost as much as possible. That's why we have drugs that cost $100,000 a year and so on and so forth. But as far as the food, I mean, after World War II, we saw some of this, but particularly when Earl Butz was the Secretary of Agriculture under Nixon around 1971, he said, go big or go home. And so we have this massively subsidized U.S. commodity crops, which basically support this, this grocery store full of just garbage. And that's where that's where the most recent times where that started. I mean, I can go back to when we developed civilization, we started farming. That's when humans lost 200 cc's of brain between 100,000 years ago and 15,000 years ago, because we transitioned away from basically hunting our food mostly. We got sicker, we got weaker, we got smaller, our brain size fell, we developed more chronic disease. First cavities ever identified were like 15,000 years ago with the advent of farming. So it goes back a long time, but in modern reference, I think you could look to early 1970s when Earl Butz did this, and we said, go big, go home, massive amount of crops, massive pesticides, and our food has just been debased ever since.
Right on. Chris, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
Well, Shawn, you're correct. It's also, by that timeline in the 70s, what occurred from the passage of the Aldrich Plan into the Rockefeller Foundation's usurping of the entire medical system beginning in the 20s, it took the takeover of the medical education system first to get the output that you're describing that began in the 70s, which would not have been possible without a money printer.
Right, I get it. From a very high level, Chris, structurally and institutionally in the United States of America, what's it going to take? I mean, there are a couple of paths forward here in regards to the money, the United States dollar, what's going to happen with the bond market, so on and so forth. What are your thoughts on where this goes over the next 10 years?
You got to be a client to hear all of that, Alex. No, I'm kidding. It's not going to go anywhere good. I look at things about 8 years at least in Satoshi terms, but all of my professional asset management career, 21 years in real terms, which is gold, right? So I'm now looking through both those prisms. Both the equity and the bond market in real terms have been in bear markets since their high of 1999. So you have to apply both an inflation-adjusted calculation as well as compared to gold, and then certainly compared to BTC. So, without just shitting all over it, I think a market that's carried by insolvent issuers and only 7 to 10 equity positions might not be as investable as it was before. Mm-hmm. And certainly what scares me as a quant is the opacity of the index and ETF market, where now you have almost 3 times the amount of passive products than the actual securities they're investing in, which is again a byproduct of fiat. Why did they create that? It's so that there's this natural scarcity of security issuance to where the money spigot will just inflate assets in about a 0.7 R squared, which is a correlation number. So I think all of that's been engineered very cunningly, but to go out 10 years, I think you're going to see huge decentralization and huge disruption of capital formation. And that should kind of shift the engine over to the side of decentralization.
Right. Speaking of decentralization, Bitcoin is a big force, I think, for decentralization. I think it will continue to be a big force for decentralization. We talked a little bit about decentralization in food and nutrition. Hopefully that does continue. In order to bridge those gaps, I think one of the biggest problems that we're facing right now is the traditional sort of TradFi markets and whatnot are now finally taking notice of these sort of decentralized systems. And I think they're seeing a need to start getting involved in some of these things. It's been a bit of a road. There's been a lot of negative sort of information on the front end of that, but we're getting to a place now where I think they're very curious and they're starting to learn. So there's this asymmetry of knowledge, and as Bitcoiners, we're sort of in this place where we have to carry that torch and start teaching these people because they really don't know anything about it. Shane.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about your views on how we got to where we are and how we might be able to do this moving forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. So me, coming from the insurance side of things, I know it's a space that's not much talked about, especially with inside Bitcoin. So on my side of things, what I've seen is, so with Bitcoin rising and being something that people didn't understand, it led to insurance markets across the space within the US and foreign to decline it immediately, and then markets started rising. And these are great markets. They sprung up to fill the gap that was needed in order to insure Bitcoin and protect the backbone of what it is. But now with the sophistication of where Bitcoin is, with it becoming a huge industry, with us in DC today talking about Bitcoin and how it needs to move into more formal markets, get adopted more broadly, we've been working full-time to just educate those markets. And with that education, we're having 100-year-old companies change and start insuring the backbone of Bitcoin. So specifically within Bitcoin mining, we're speaking with them and having them look at it as traditional data centers, which would be risks that they want to take on. And now with opening the doors, educating them on this is what it looks like, it's not scary, let's get rid of like the ignorance around what it is and educate each other so we can form new products in order to protect the industry from a different angle.
Right. Yeah, in the same vein, something we were talking about backstage before we got up here was the whole ability for all of us to talk to each other now.
Yeah.
And how do you guys see that working out for you? I mean, your voice, for example, Dr. Baker, you have a huge platform out there, and you're able to talk to people directly. Like, how do you feel this is all going to work out moving forward in regards to getting word out? And I feel like that you guys are sort of a little bit of the warrior spirit in terms of let's go, let's get this thing done. What do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, like I said, the message I've been talking about nutrition, it's not new. I mean, I'm not the guy that first told people to eat a bunch of meat. I mean, this goes back arguably hundreds of years and perhaps even farther. I mean, there's evidence of ancient Greeks doing these types of diets during athletic times. And so the difference is now, I can put out a tweet or hop on social media and instantly, within an hour, 50,000 people might see it. And so we have this, and I talked about very early, spread this message, laterally, don't get vertical on it. So the more voices we have, and I think this is, ultimately, as I mentioned, I don't think there's going to be a top-down solution. It's going to come from the masses, and it needs to, and it should come from us. I mean, it should be democratized. I think that you just have to use your voice. You have to step up because, they can, and I have been. I mean, during COVID, I got shut down so many times, I can't tell you. I mean, I had most of my social media. I was kicked off Twitter permanently for life Somehow I got back on. I'm not sure what happened. I guess I had to change. Yeah, thanks, Elon, for that. So, I mean, it has to be, even if you have a smaller platform or voice, you have to get out there and voice those types of things, whether it's about Bitcoin or nutrition or health or anything else you feel strongly about. And the cream will rise for the top. I mean, the really nice thing about the space I'm in is in health, is because when I take a patient and they lose 100 pounds and they come off their psych meds and they come off their diabetes meds, that is really hard to sort of deny. I mean, you get people, we're in a very political time, and there's all kinds of information, disinformation, misinformation, misinfluencers out there. It's hard to weed through that. So, but when I tell somebody, hey, you can look in the mirror and figure out if you're healthy or not, you can certainly tell if you've lost 50 pounds. So it's hard to gaslight that. So that's the one advantage that I have. Whereas, people believe in Bitcoin, we think it's going to the moon or wherever it's going to go, or it's going to take over the world. We can't know that unequivocally. I mean, as much as we believe in that, and I think we should, health is one of those things it's undeniable when you feel better. And so that's an advantage. But I mean, again, we just, the proof of work that we show, I mean, it's a $2 trillion asset. That's something. That's a big deal. And I think we see the same thing in the health space. Now, again, if they cut off that ability for us to communicate, and I'm not convinced they won't try it, because we saw what happened during COVID. I mean, I've been deplatformed, demonetized, shadow banned ad nauseum. And to think that won't happen again, we see what's happening in Europe. I mean, you go into UK and you like the wrong tweet, and you got police at your doorstep. So, I mean, this battle is far from won. I mean, we have to be vigilant about this and aggressive, and we can't compromise. I think that's the thing. People, you see people, they give them an inch, and the proverbial thing will take a mile. We have to take those inches back, quite honestly, from my view. I think we just have to say, look, we need to drive it so hard the other way that there's no chance that this can happen. And so, freedom of speech, freedom of money, sound money, that has to happen.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I think you're absolutely correct. We're at a point in time where the Western world has kind of degenerated to a degree where I think there's a lot of men in the West who kind of just like stood by and watched as it happened, and were kind of like, it's okay, I'm not going to get involved, hands off, don't want to necessarily speak up. But we're in a period of time right now where I think men in the West are starting to realize it's time to stand up and it's time to speak up, and we need to get involved, because if we don't get involved, we're going to lose this whole deal. So that's across the entire spectrum. We were talking a little bit earlier, is like in my entire adult life, it seemed like everything was going in the wrong direction for a real long time, institutionally. And again, this is behavioral effects, I think, that have stemmed from the money. When you have a fiat system where certain people that are really close to the money printer are going to benefit from the printing of the money in a greater way than everybody else, it starts to cause people to behave certain ways. And unfortunately, some of the people that are most aggressive in the society, people who are seeking power, who probably should, my view is if someone's seeking power, they probably shouldn't have power, right? But those are the types of people who are attracted to that dynamic. And what that ends up leading to is it ends up leading to people who get close to the money printer, they get the money first, they have the most advantages, then they then turn around and use that to generate lobbying and legislation that benefits them, so on and so forth. And you keep doing that over and over again at a very high level. That's how we kind of end up where we are today. And if we don't arrest that process, and hopefully we don't arrest the process. Look, there's a couple of different pathways fiat money can take, right? It's like almost everybody I talk to about this agrees that right now, with a debt to GDP level of something like 119+%. Some people believe that we're in a debt spiral. Lynn Alden is famously noted for saying, nothing stops this train. Elon got into his position with Doge, and they did their very best to arrest some of the overspending and abuse and waste in government, and that got derailed rather quickly. So what we're facing right now is possibly less and less demand for U.S. treasuries over time, which weakens the U.S. fiscal position, so on and so forth. So what happens there? They have to essentially try to safely land this airplane, and there's a couple of ways that can go that's not great, but at the end of the day, it really takes all, in my opinion, it's time for men like you, men like whoever is out there listening to me, who we all have skin in this game. It's time to stand up and say what needs to be said and get the messages out there that need to get said in order to start turning this thing around. Chris, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Henry Ford said 80 years ago, if people knew an inkling about the money system, there would be a revolution tomorrow. And that's a paraphrase because I'm not remembering the exact quote. So this is not new, as you were mentioning. This is ancient, and it's been done over and over and over again. And because we're coming into the, call it 7th, 8th, 9th inning of the 4th turning, the hour is late. The good news is that the fixes are simple, right? Regress back to state of nature with diet, with money, with incentives, and with power structures, and everything will handle itself. And as long as we anchor to sound money, the worries and the taking advantage of and the speculations and all of this distortion that occurs by having an unsound money system just severely gets reduced, if not goes away. But I'm just like honored to be on this panel with these guys and to speak with Shane, who's in his early 30s. Like the young men that are entrepreneurs in that space and women need to drive the adoption curve on the education side. Because once you know, if everybody here has read Eustace Mullins, G. Edward Griffin, and followed Ron Paul, know all the Austrian, then you know what we're dealing with exactly now. And if we just got that message out, no one's going to go, oh yeah, I'm going to be an unethical psychopath and eat fake food. Like, you're not going to choose to do that naturally. So I think the educational lift by younger generations is very important here.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely see right now as well, because the one thing that I would even call for more is like more trust conduits that we can put into traditional finance markets that understand Bitcoin and then understand that market and then tie them together. Because I think right now I see that the Bitcoin train, well, we all know that the fiat train is going one way, the Bitcoin train is going this way, and it's the true train to be on. But while that train is moving at the speed of light, we start needing trust conduits or integrations that add to that train so we don't leave all the infrastructure behind. So that's one of the big things too, relating it to insurance. We have markets that sit within inside the Bitcoin market. They're great carriers, and they provide coverage for many of these Bitcoin miners, wallets, exchanges, and the rest. But there's so much capacity sitting on the sideline. In the US alone, we have 4,000 plus carriers. None of them are writing Bitcoin. None of them are protecting those companies. And it's not always because they don't believe in the message. It's that they haven't been educated in why they should be doing it. And I think now's the time to start taking those markets and saying, this is what it is, and then we can retrofit the infrastructure, retrofit the capacity that sits over here, and start funneling it into our Bitcoin market. And from there, I think we get seeds planted within inside all the other networks where we can start growing in other places outside of just the Bitcoin network.
Yeah. Essentially, it comes back to that asymmetry of information thing. We're in a situation where we do need to bridge that gap. I kind of think of it like in terms of like the Bitcoin treasury companies and what they're doing right now. You essentially have all the TradFi markets, hundreds of trillions of dollars of capital sort of trapped on one side of a chasm, and they're kind of looking over the chasm at Bitcoin. And for those people who understand some of these decentralized systems things, you can act as sort of a liaison to help move some of that over to the other side. What kind of efforts are you guys working on individually in terms of like getting words out in the nutrition space? Shawn, I know you've got your book that you're doing. What else are you working on right now?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, we have a healthcare company, and like I said, as much as, you can go back to, 2009 when somebody said, hey, the system's broken, here's a solution. So we're trying to find a solution on the healthcare side. Clearly, anybody who's been involved in the healthcare system knows it's bloated, it's inefficient, it's frustrating, and often it doesn't work. Most of the time it doesn't work very well. So with our company Rivero, I mean, we literally take people, we figure out what's wrong with them, why it's wrong with them, we give them a solution for that, and they're our customers for 6 months and then we're done. They're like, your disease is gone, go on with your life. That is not maybe the best business model, but it is the ethical and right thing to do. That's why I got into medicine in the first place. And so we're trying to build that out, scale that out, so we can go from treating a few hundred and a few thousand patients to hopefully tens, hundreds of thousands, and millions of patients, because that's the right thing to do medically. Now, again, we spend God knows how much, $5 trillion a year on healthcare, and we don't get anything for it. I mean, you can see it, and you can see with the solutions, there's going to be a lot more AI. You're going to go to an AI instead of a doctor. They're trying to give AIs medical licenses. That's being talked about in legislation. So what that does is now it gives big pharma, who now all the physicians work for as subcontractors. They don't even need those physicians anymore. They can have an AI that can do it for a fraction of the cost. It doesn't get tired, doesn't take days off, doesn't need to be flown to Hawaii to some medical conference, right? And so they'll do that. The AI will write the prescription for you. An Amazon drone will deliver the drugs later that day. And that's where medicine will go in many, many ways. Now, some people are going to be happy and they're going to sign up for it because they can stay in their bathrobe instead of getting dressed up and go to the doctor's office. That's in many ways where we're going. And so if you don't like that, if you don't want that to be for you or your family or your kids, and where everybody's medicated, everybody's on GLP-1s and SSRIs or whatever mental health drug they have so we can deal with the fiat world, you can make a difference. And I tell people, stop giving the people that are poisoning you, killing you money, and maybe support the people that are trying to do the right thing. Same thing with Bitcoin, same thing with everything else. And so, again, check out Rivero.com if you're interested, if you got a family or a loved one you think would benefit from that style of treatment. We'd love to have them. I see every single patient. I meet with them online virtually. It's fun. I have a blast. I love what I do as a physician right now. Most physicians kind of don't like it because they never see wins. They see a bunch of losses and they feel like they're trapped in this system. They took on a bunch of debt and they're like stuck. But we're changing it. So that's what we're doing.
That's fantastic. Every Bitcoiner I've ever spoken to in regards to this kind of stuff is very aligned on the nutrition front. Healthcare is very important to them. Living well, eating well, all the things. And every single one of them has agreed, wouldn't it be great if we had some kind of healthcare network that was all Bitcoin doctors? So I'm just putting the seed out there. If you're in healthcare and you're a doctor, maybe it's time to get together and form something, because I think Bitcoiners would flock to it, knowing that we all have similar shared value systems and understandings of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a number of doctors that are Bitcoiners, and I'm certainly one of them. I guess one of the problems is people were saying, well, are they going to spend their Bitcoin? Because there's a lot of people saying, I'm not ready to spend it yet. So we're still in that kind of that transition phase,
sure,
where it's more a store of value than a currency at this point.
Sure.
So, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, aligned philosophically, and you think about it. Talking about the low time preference for Bitcoin, we're going to wait it out. Well, it doesn't do any good if your health decays. So you got to be healthy enough and live long enough to
right,
enjoy the fruits of your low time preference.
All
So
right. Very good.
We got to take care of yourself. And you got to be an example. Like for those that are fathers and mothers that have kids, they don't care what you say. They care what you do and what they see. So you've got to be the physical, mental, spiritual example for your children. And if you spend your whole life, not taking care of yourself, spending all your time on your phone, that's what they're going to see. That's what they're going to mimic, and it's not going to turn out well.
Right. Okay. We have just a few minutes left. Let's get some closing comments. Shane, do you want to go, and then we'll finish with Chris?
No, absolutely. Well, the biggest thing is love Bitcoin, and I think the network needs to be protected in a good way. And so hopefully we can just get more education across the board. I think education leads to trust. Trust leads to more adoption across the network. So things to look forward to.
Right on. Chris, any closing thoughts?
Yeah. Be kinder to one another. Be less tribal. Thank you. And set your sights away from the number go up bullshit. that if we're all correct and we're all devoting time, low time preference, to this new earth, then measuring it in fiat doesn't even matter. So first principles are the only principles.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So in closing, every single one of us are ambassadors out there. When I came into Bitcoin, there was a lot of toxic Bitcoiner kind of activity, and I would say I totally agree. Yeah, I would totally agree that it's time to just be kind and patient and be good ambassadors and get the word out to the rest of the world. And together, we can maybe make a difference.
Thanks for having me.
Keep it going. More applause. All the applause. They deserve it. Thank you, gentlemen.